Hello, I'm Jenya Delima. Welcome to Writing and Editing, the podcast for people who write, edit, read, or listen. Have you ever wondered how sharing your personal stories can add clarity to your personal and professional goals? Well, educator, creator, and speaker, Dr. Keith McNally is here to explain this concept and its importance. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm going to get this right, Jenny. It is a pleasure to be here. And so I've been practicing your name in my head. To be quite honest, I talk to people all the time on my shows.
Mhm.
And so I do make it a very clear and intentional point, and I've only screwed up one person's name. And so other
Oh,
than
good
that,
job. Well, if you want to tell us a little bit, not just about yourself, but also how you came to understand the importance of sharing personal stories.
well, I'm a doctor, so doctor of education. And so I graduated with my doctoral degree from the University of Phoenix in 2010. Been teaching in the college classroom by trade. I am a college professor in the world of IT, so information technology. And so I've been helping typically military personnel either improve their skills or those transitioning out of the service getting a job in IT within 1 to 2 years. So whether it's in the college classroom or as an apprenticeship or whatever that looks like, my focus has been to upskill those people who are looking to make a career
Oh,
transition from whatever they were doing. And I've taken easily people who have not ever touched a computer, well, in the way that we would want to,
right.
from cooks to mechanics to pilots to whatever, even a Navy SEAL. I have trained a Navy SEAL
Oh, nice.
how to build infrastructure. And so it's been really cool. And so that's been fantastic. But to kind of clarify or get around to your question,
Mhm.
really the focus has been since COVID. And since COVID, people's stories have been top of our focal point because everybody's been making either shifts, pivots, transitions, changes
Mhm.
in their life, typically out of necessity. And so that's been a real focal point for me because I went through that same transformation as well.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. So, do you think that it was just seeing the rewards that came from that personal transformation that led you to seeing how it could benefit other people?
I did a couple of things from COVID and the quarantine. And so we'll go back a couple of years from the time of this recording. And I always say it's a flip side of a coin. And so on one side of the coin, people incurred a lot of loss. And so
Mhm.
whether that be family members, friends, money, homes, the security that really comes with life. And so COVID took some of that away from us. And
Right.
it really hurt. It hurt us. It hurt us physically. It hurt us emotionally. To some, it hurt them spiritually. And whatever space that was, they incurred loss. So there was regrets, grief, trauma, and all of those things. On the other side of the coin, for those who didn't really incur loss, but then with the quarantine, when they got up every morning, a lot of people were not liking who they saw in the mirror. And because of that, they wanted to make some alignment changes. Like they had achieved a lot in life, and many people have, and that's really good. We all want to achieve stuff. But what they were finding is everything that they've achieved, all the material stuff,
Right.
was not aligning with who they wanted to be or thought they were in terms of character, person, values, and whatnot. And so, whatever side of the coin you found yourself on, you wanted to change your own narrative. You wanted to change the narrative of your life because that became really, really important.
Have you ever seen people who are struggling to pinpoint what these achievements are that they want in life, or being able to figure out which direction they want their narrative to go? Maybe, for instance, they know they want to change, but they can't articulate exactly what they want that change to be.
So I wrote a book.
Perfect.
I did write a book. And so if I can kind of give it a shout out, it's called
Of course.
Walking the Path, a Leader's Journey. And that book was kind of my metaphorical journey that I took. Now
Mhm.
it's only a piece of the bigger picture. What we were finding, or at least what I was finding in all of the conversations that I started to have, 2020, 2021, was, and I don't want to use the cliche now, stuck, but they were finding themselves in a space that was uncomfortable, either because of their own expectations or the expectations of others. And so
Mhm.
the conversations that I was having was people wanted to kind of remove themselves in some way, shape, or form from what's expected. And so my book, Walking the Path of Leader's Journey, was about a young man. So I wrote a narrative within context of what it means to become a leader. Now, this isn't an academic book by any means. It's not a C-suite leadership book by any means. It's really designed for the individual to say, I could see myself in this position, but I don't know what to do about it.
Ah, got it.
For John, he was living under the expectation of his family. So
Mm-hmm.
the story is, this community lives enclosed with a mountain range, and he was expected to take over his daddy's farm, the standard cliche story. But in order to not do that, to really find out who he was, he had to cross the mountain. And so with his mentor's guidance, he became vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
allowed himself to make intentional changes, found a team of people, his friends, his colleagues, who really trusted him and he in them.
Mm-hmm.
And they all agreed that because of their own different circumstances, they all agreed to take on the challenge because nobody's ever done it before. Nobody's ever left the community. Nobody's ever
Ah,
crossed over the mountain. Nobody's ever challenged themselves
mm-hmm.
to do something different. This small group of people, young people, 17, 18 years old, took on that challenge. And so, from a very real perspective, or even a very metaphorical perspective, everybody who I was talking to saw that, that mountain, that obstacle in their world,
Right.
and they knew they had to find a way through it, over it, around it. But the journey was inside. They
Mm-hmm.
had to make changes.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I can see it being so relatable to a lot of people too, just because so often we do have at least that feeling of being like discontent is there and it's present and we recognize it's there, but we might not know how to get around it or how to change in some way that it will maybe not even just completely go away, but at least be lessened until we reach the next step where we then identify what we want after that. So I can see that being something that people really grasp onto.
And they did. And so bringing that back into what I was doing personally,
Mm-hmm.
I was starting to reach out to people, and the only people I really knew, and that's only by profile and resume, were those on LinkedIn. And so my journey was I wanted to start connecting with people. And I simply started tapping on people's virtual doors. Hey, would you like to have a conversation? Now, not everybody said yeah front, but the more and more people were saying yeah. And so those conversations, some of them were heart-wrenching because people had lost
Mm-hmm.
stuff and family, and people were crying on the Zoom call to a
Oh.
perfect stranger, which was me. And so what I decided to do was take those conversations and share them and ask for permission. Can we share this conversation? Can we share your story? Can we share your narrative? Would you want to do that? And so again, it started with people that I knew, but then it grew. So they started saying, you really need to talk to Dr. Keith. You really need to share your story on the Question Guy podcast. And that was the original podcast. And more people were doing that. And because they were sharing their story, it gave me confidence to share my story. And my story is that I've attempted suicide twice in the past, well, now 11 years, because as of last year, it was 10. And so having to deal with that grief trauma and those circumstances in my life
Mm-hmm.
helped me now help others. And so it's all of those narratives, it's all of those stories, it's all of those conversations that people can kind of jump into and
Mm-hmm.
say, let's reconnect in a very real, meaningful, and intentional way. And when we do that, that's when real change happens.
That's beautiful. Did
Right.
you find that some people had a hard time being vulnerable? Like, was this maybe even new to them?
Yes. And so the direct answer is yes. And like I said, even myself,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't necessarily something that I jumped into or talked about, but it was listening to what people had to say and validating their experience. So it's their experiences in their life and saying, that had to have been tough, or that had to have been scary, or I can only imagine myself in that situation. And so, with every little conversation, with every next conversation, my ability to create a space that allowed somebody to feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's a virtual space,
Mm-hmm.
was getting better. So, whether innately it's who I am, or by structure or design or by intent, I create this space where people feel comfortable and we can both become vulnerable. Because talking about suicide isn't easy. Talking about trauma isn't easy. Talking about the bad stuff in life isn't always easy. And sometimes it's not even comfortable. We talk about being easy. People don't like to talk about, what went wrong or the responsibilities they didn't meet up to
Mm-hmm.
or things that they failed at. But it's those pieces in life that make our character, that create our character,
Mm-hmm.
that restructure our character. And it's those things that once you figure it out, then you start getting confidence. Then you start saying, yeah, that was me, but this is me now. This is what I did, but this is what I can do now. And so people were jumping on those conversations more and more. So I'm still having them. I have 5 different conversations, people's personal story, people's professional story, social impact, suicide, and conversations. Those people who want to have a deeper, meaningful relationship, at least with me. But
Well, it sounds
uh,
like it's working well and that people are flocking to you because you do seem to be having a lot of people gravitate toward you for those reasons and to chat with you.
yeah, yeah, it's really good. And so we're changing the world. It seems like a big ambition, but at the same time, I think every conversation we do change. And so even in this conversation, I'm going to be impacted. I'm going to move forward with something because you allowed me to sit here with the microphone and share thoughts and ideas. And so it's going to change me at the very least.
Wow. Well, moving back into goals and then how this vulnerability and sharing leads to adding that clarity, what are some of the changes that you've seen in people as a result or that they've shared with you?
When people have shared their stories, and I've had some people who they there's some of us who shouldn't be alive. And I don't say that, rather flippantly,
Right.
because some of us have been impacted by COVID. Some of us have been impacted by serious medical condition. Some
Mhm.
people have attempted suicide. I've also survived a heart attack.
Oh,
But when we come face to face with those things that challenge us the most,
mhm.
and they're saying to themselves, and I said it to myself, there's more to life than this. Whatever this is, it doesn't really matter. There's more to life than this. Then in their head, it clicks. They understand 3 things about themselves: they have value, they're important, and they have a purpose. And so when those 3 things click inside your brain, you can do anything because then you're driven. You're either driven to become a better version of yourself, and then another cliche, or what they've also done is I take the journey forward
Mhm.
and I've become successful, whatever that end goal is, or even if it's the journey itself, people are going to see that and they're going to want to be a part of that journey as well. And so a lot of people have talked to, have become coaches, speakers, or whatever, authors, so that they can share their value with their space. And so whatever, niche group or market, whatever that looks like, their brand,
Yeah.
they could kind of add value to people's lives because everybody on the planet right now hurts in some way. And so it's everybody helping somebody else is what's going to change the world.
Yeah, I can really see how adding confidence to someone or someone's confidence improving, or again, realizing, no, I do have value, how that would lead to that just because, and this is just my opinion, I think a lot of those feelings are what weigh us down and make us feel like we're not capable of doing what it is we really want to do, or even looking outside of whatever these expectations are that are put upon us versus the ones that are internal to who we are and what we secretly desire, or maybe not so secretly desire, but just feel like maybe we don't even have the right to pursue it.
Yeah. When you look at other people's expectations, that kind of blinds us to our potential. And so even, do I have the right to pursue that? And there's another whole conversation altogether. It's called permission. And so I've had those conversations before too, because sometimes it's true, we don't give ourselves permission to step forward and to make change and to do things differently because it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the expectation of others, even if it's just your mom or dad or brother or sister or somebody that you know,
Right.
they're expecting you to behave some way. And you
Right.
wanted so tired of what's going on because if you do the same thing tomorrow, guess what's going to happen tomorrow? Same results as today. So you got to do something differently. Even if it's just saying, I'm going to have something different for lunch, or I'm going to have something different for, or I'm going to go for a walk today, or I'm going to talk to this friend I haven't talked to, and whatever. If you do something different, something small, but something different, it's the start of change.
Yeah. Not to make this too sciencey, but I've been reading a lot about neural pathways and the plasticity of our brain lately, and this all lines up so neatly with that, where it is a lot of those small changes that we are creating a new neural pathway, and that leads to that, on a biological
Mm.
anatomical level that we are changing and we're allowing ourselves to live a different way. And that path then becomes natural instead of the old path where we thought whatever it was we thought about ourselves or whatever it was we thought about what we were or were not capable of and what our life should be like.
So true. So true. But has to become habit. And so it's not just, one day I'll just do something and then, so for me, I'll just give a real quick example. I'm on a mission to eradicate, the impact of suicide at the very least across the globe. And so I have a very regimented day. So my day starts early. Usually do a 12-mile hike with a 30-pound pack. I have very much special dietary intakes. But every once in a while, I eat chocolate. My goal is to hike the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. So if anybody of your listeners are thinking, what's he trying to accomplish? Is that part of my mission is to show that even somebody who has attempted suicide twice and survived a heart attack, I know that I am of value. I know that I am important, and I know that I have a purpose. And so my purpose right now is to have conversations to help people recognize those three things about themselves, but also show that they could do things that they never thought they could. And for me, that's hiking the Appalachian Trail all
Oh,
the way
that
through.
sounds fun. Are you documenting this as you go along and sharing it?
I'm writing my own journal, so my training journal and whatnot. But right now, my conversations are focused on sharing other people's narratives and helping people understand their purpose. But when I get on the trail, that's a different story altogether. That's a different narrative,
Oh,
totally
that'll be
different
neat to
narrative.
see. Yeah, so on your website, you talk a little bit about the stigma that we still have in our society about even sharing some of these personal stories. I wonder if you can expand on that and why you think that, why it is still so common.
I don't know the answer to that question, to be quite honest. What I've figured out, however, is that for a long time, mental health, mental illness, mental wellness
Hmm.
tend to be lumped in the same category. Mental health is our category. Something's wrong with our brain. And that's been the medical model for years, at least here in America. Maybe not so much across the globe, but at least here in America, we subscribe to the medical model. What I'm finding now in 2024, as the time of this recording, is that there is a broader landscape of understanding that we've only begun to tap into.
Hmm.
Not everybody is mentally ill. Now, there are people who are mentally ill. There is something structurally wrong with their brain. Their neural pathways don't work correctly, and I get that. That's not going to be, however, the scope for everybody. I am not mentally ill. I don't have a diagnosis. I don't have a depressive diagnosis. I don't have recurring, wanting to hurt myself ideations. I had circumstances in my life that said, this really sucks and I want to get out. Thus the two attempts. I say all that to say is that when we need to have those conversations, becoming vulnerable and sharing story is still taboo,
Yeah.
especially for men.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm 54 as at the time of this recording. I'm 54, and I'm a white male at that. So What's the expectation for me to be successful, to have climbed the corporate ladder, to have multiple houses and cars and all those, lots of money in the bank and all those kind of really cool things. But there's still emptiness inside. And if there's emptiness inside, we don't recognize our value and importance and our purpose.
Yeah.
So to change that, I no longer refer to mental health as mental health. We should be looking at, what does it mean to be well? What does it mean to be whole? What does it mean to be complete? And whole mean WHLE, not holistic, but that's another idea altogether. What does it mean to be human? It means that we can have emotions. It means that we can have opinions.
Mm-hmm.
It means that we can share those thoughts and ideas with other people. If we could kind of tap into what it really means to be human, including our spirituality, and that means different things to different people, it's still part of who we are.
Right.
It's part of our nature. And some people say story is also a part of our DNA. I've had those conversations as well. Story, narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at all the textual elements, the sacred text, whether it be the Bible or whatever, book you kind of subscribe to, it's still a narrative. It's somebody's narrative. So we can kind of create our own narrative. And I think you inferred to this earlier. We can start creating our own narrative
Mm-hmm.
by changing our habits, by changing our thoughts, putting things into practice, and picking up a pen and writing things down in a journal and creating our own story. If we can do that, we could change our lives.
Oh, that's wonderful. I just love it because I think it is so easy for us to feel like we lack agency in our own lives and that this circumstance is out of my control. I'll disappoint this person. This person will be mad at me if I pursue this path instead. And so then we do, just to use wording that you used earlier, even though you said it was a cliche, we stay stuck. And that's not going to lead us to pursuing the goals that really matter to us.
So true. So true. And if I could say anything to your audience,
Yes.
I give permission. Dr. K, Dr. Keith is giving you permission to do something different today. Whatever that is. Write down your thoughts. Share a conversation with somebody. Drive a different route to work. If that's what you got to do. Do something different. Challenge yourself. Step outside your comfort zone. Now, I know out there someone's going to say, if I do that, I'm going to be late for work. And so all these negative thoughts come around. Yeah, there's a lot of power in positivity that can't be, I don't know if the phrase is overstated or understated. It can't be said enough.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of power in positivity. Now, it's not going to solve every problem,
Right.
but it's going to give you the confidence to do something different and do something differently. So I give permission.
Well, thank you. And thank you again for being here. This was fun. I mean, I know it sounds weird to say this was fun because we were talking about vulnerability and some heavier topics, but it's just so inspirational and it's hopeful. You come away from this thinking, I can do this. I can do these different things and maybe see where it takes me. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciated this.
And that's all for today. Thank you for listening, and please check out the show notes for more information. And then please join me next week when my friend and editor Dana Wright and I will be returning for another episode of Editing Essentials. We'll be talking about what book coaching is and when to hire one. Thank you.